Hi, friends. Thank you so much for joining us today on our weekly series here on a Friday. I'm Suman Kapur, CEO of Well Balanced Solutions, and I'm here with my dear friend Tiffany Castano, CEO of Zephyr, and we are joined by the amazing Janifer Wheeler. So thrilled to have her here today. She's got an extensive bio, and to even edit it down was a challenge, a good challenge, but I just wanted to highlight a few things. So Janifer is known as the joyful, badass whisperer who brings a shift tone of fierce fun to continuous cultural improvement. She's the founder of the Joyful Badass Academy, where she empowers business leaders to maximize people and profits by prioritizing joy, empathy, equality, and inclusion. That in and of itself is amazing. But on top of that, she most recently she launched the D&I department, which provides consulting and education for small, mid-sized business owners who want diversity and inclusion but don't currently have the budget for a D&I team. She's a member of the Austin LGBTQ Chamber of Commerce, Amazing Women Leaders, chapter ambassador for Polka Dot Powerhouse, and a Google certified facilitator of hashtag I Am Remarkable. And if you think that's not enough, there's more. As an international award-winning speaker, soul spa game developer, and certified diversity professional, she encourages every human being to unleash their soul's badassery and invest in a more joyful living. She is beyond amazing. I want to be her when I grow up. Amazing, amazing credentials, and she has the personality, the experience to back it all up. Welcome, Janifer. Thank you so much for finding the time to be with us today.
Oh, there was no need to find the time. It's my pleasure, my honor. I am so thrilled to be here to chat with you all today. So, oh no, there was no schedule rearranging or anything around this. So I am just very happy to be here. And thank you. All those compliments are really going to send me off on a great weekend.
You deserve it. You're doing such amazing stuff. You absolutely deserve it.
Thank you.
I wanted to start by asking you when Tiffany approached you in inviting you here, what were some of the thoughts that went through your head? Why do you want to be part of this conversation?
Well, I think conversations around these topics are so important. Right? We can't learn about each other if we don't talk about it. We can't get to know other people's stories. We can't, if we keep ourselves closed and staying in a fixed mindset, right, where we're not open to other people, where we're just convinced of our own opinion, that's not helpful. It's not moving the conversation forward. It's not moving any of us forward. And, I originally became involved. I was a teacher for years. I've had children of all nationalities, cultures, races, and it was truly my pleasure to learn and grow with them and create a deeper understanding of what other people experience, right? We have a lot of commonality, but we also have differences. And I think one of the reasons I wanted to chat with y'all and be on the show is because it takes all the voices. It's not exclusive of this group or that group. We all have to be having this conversation together. And I think it's just important that we open the door and we just let it stay open. And as people come around or as people begin to be more informed, then the door can widen and we can just keep talking. And eventually the door it won't close, right? It'll just constantly stay open. So I'm really glad to be here. I just think the world of Tiffany and the work that she does. And now you're in my tribe. So, and everybody on the call is like, woohoo! Who can't love that?
Community, right? I'm so grateful.
Exactly.
You know those sentiments flow the opposite way, and as do they to Suman. So and everyone that's joining us here live and on the replay, we're so grateful for you. Don't feel free to unmute yourself, to pop something in the chat. If you have any questions, any thoughts, we are here and looking forward to chatting today.
Yeah.
So one of the things you talk about, Janifer, is understanding commonality. I'd love if you can share some of those stories. You shared so many amazing stories with Tiffany and me when we spoke earlier. And the power of commonality. So it would be great to hear some of those stories and how you have found that to be empowering.
Absolutely. So, I was thinking last night, just, kind of mulling over some of the things that I know about my family and, kind of our own history. So, we're talking about our personal histories, right? I mean, as individuals, we have our own personal history and story of being a human, insert whatever else you want to say around it, in the world, right? We start out with a human experience, and it's, we add to it based on the other aspects of ourselves and how we interact in the world with those characteristics or whatever it is. And so when I think back, when I was a little girl, like a very little girl, I was like enamored with Sesame Street. I watched Sesame Street every single day, like glued to the television. And it was because of the diversity. There was multiple representations. I'm a small town girl from Georgia, so I didn't see a lot of difference, right? We had African-American Black people in our community. We had white people. That was it. That was my view. And so Sesame Street helped me see that there's more, right? And it was so positive. Everything about it was positive. So one thing I pull out of that is it really does depend on what you're told and how you're raised and what you're exposed to, because everything to me from a very early age was positive around race and gender. It was positive. And so, and one funny story is when my mom was pregnant with my sister, I wanted a black baby brother because Roosevelt Franklin was my favorite character on Sesame Street. He only made like a handful of appearances, but my favorite character. And, so my grandmother found me a black boy baby doll and got it for me. And I carried that. He was Franklin, he was Roosevelt Franklin to me. So yeah, I carried him everywhere. And when my sister was born, I was like, what? Wait a minute. Can we just get a dog? This is not what I thought was going to happen. So, I mean, I just tell that story because, my family didn't discourage me. They knew that wasn't going to happen. Right. But they were like, no, here. And so I feel like in spite of the culture that I was raised in, because it was the rural South, but at the same time, there felt like such connection and commonality because, my family was not wealthy. When we think about privilege, it's often thought about monetary, financial. It's about the gain of wealth. And my family did not have that. My dad was a preacher, like he was a country preacher. So we didn't ever, he was never the pastor. Well, not never when I was in college, but, we didn't start out in these huge churches. It was a little bitty church in the middle of nowhere. I rode a school bus 15 miles as a 5-year-old to go to school. So we lived way out. We didn't have extras. We didn't have things. My great grandmother had several children. Her husband was an alcoholic, basically left them. And so she would take my 6-year-old pawpaw out into the cotton field and pick cotton because that's all she could do to try to earn money. This is the Great Depression, right? So in Georgia, the Great Depression was really hard on everyone because there was a drought, there were boll weevils that came and got into the cotton, and the depression starts. So I think if we look back in our own personal histories, we can find these connections, right? I mean, we can look back and say, for me, it's like, I'm no better than anyone else. My family started from dirt, like nothing, like we had nothing. What I now realize is that we had the advantage of white skin to move us past our nothing start in a way that, Black African-American people did not have. I didn't realize that. I felt like we were very similar, like we were almost the same, like we were cousins from another mother because these were our experiences. And I have no recollection of my grandparents ever, really no one in my family like encouraging racist comments or not liking someone or not accepting someone around race. But it still was there, right? It was still permeating that glory to the South and all that stuff. It still existed. So you're kind of kind of like, wait, what is this? Because my family isn't really acting like this, but it's all out there, and you see it, and you hear other people talk about it. And then last night I was thinking, just kind of going back, and my great grandmother lived in Section 8 housing, and so did my 2 aunts. So we would go over there to visit her, and it didn't seem that different from what other people. It was like, oh well, we're all in this together. All the kids are playing outside. People are putting their clothes on the line. That was at my house. I lived in the country, so it just felt like we had this commonality, right? And so that's what I reached to. I feel like one of the places where I've been able to not only develop empathy, but feel that human connection. And, I remember when I was in school, Black History Month was one of my favorite things because it was always filled with biographies. I love to learn about people, all these biographies. And so many of the stories started out, I was one of 10 children. I didn't have access to this or that, or, I made my way, I pushed my way through. And in many ways, it felt like that was a similar story to my family. They had nothing. My grandparents had no college, no high school education. None of their siblings, 2 siblings out of 10 children had a high school education. One person went to college because she became a nurse, or maybe it wasn't even college in those days. I don't know the level of education that got people into nursing, but she was a nurse. Everybody else was like blue collar worker, I don't know, there just felt like a familiarity. Like we're kind of doing some of the similar things. And then when I got older, that's when I began to realize, okay, we might have felt like we were sort of starting here, but we had the advantage to get ourselves, we didn't have to overcome as many obstacles, or paths were made slightly clearer, right? But when you think about a lot of societies, the people who are poor are the ones who were looked down on by practically everyone, right? Like it's something they did to themselves, they caused it themselves, they created themselves. That is not true. Like, I don't think that's true. And if my grandparents had not been willing to move to the city, willing to take some risks, willing to do some things to make a different life for themselves, I feel pretty sure that a huge majority of my family would not be, we wouldn't be doing what we're doing, right? And it's due to, your own grit and determination, but also your access to opportunity. And that is what is not available to everyone at the same place. And so that's why I'm just a huge advocate of equality and getting rid of all this. Like, we don't need this mess, this systemic racism, the white superiority, we're better than you. I never felt that way. I never felt like I was better than other people because, I don't know. I just never really felt that way because we didn't have any money. We weren't wealthy. We weren't, we were the preacher's family, right? So it was almost like we were a charity case. So yeah, my dad got paid, but it's not much. We always lived in a church-owned home. Like, I was in high school before my parents actually had their own house because we always lived in church houses. And if my dad lost his job or changed jobs, we moved. You didn't stay there. You always moved to the work. And so I think even though there's a different package around it, those experiences generate the same emotions. And that is what I like for people to think about, right? We may not have the same lived experiences, but what we have encountered creates these emotional reactions and these emotional, all these feelings that are generated. I told you last night I was thinking about this, and I remembered a time when there was a contentious election in our city, and the person who was running's last name was Israel, and some guy in our church was convinced that he was a Jewish person who was going to just like ruin the city, like just some crazy concepts. But he came to our house one night. I don't know if he was drunk or what. I was like 8 years old, and banging on the door and screaming and hollering and like threatening my dad if he didn't come out and all of this stuff. And I remember my mom getting us into the back bedroom and shutting the door and saying, "You don't come out until I come back." And I did not remember that. I had blocked that because I was so scared. I mean, I was completely just frightened out of my mind. And I know my sister was crying because she's younger, and it just made me think about how there are people who this is their daily. This is not a one-time incident. This is their daily. And I got very emotional. And so I think we have to look at our own experiences, those places where we have felt that deep fear, right? Where we've been bullied. I mean, I find it hard to believe that that there's anyone in anywhere who hasn't been bullied or humiliated or, something done to them with malice, right? And that generates feelings. It doesn't, to me, it's not irrelevant how that happened, but if we just push a little bit to the side the circumstances and just focus on the feeling, because then when I think about how that feeling is amplified for other people, that is like a deep well of empathy for me, because I feel like, okay, if I felt that in that one moment or multiple moments, this is someone else's daily life. This is someone else's all the time. This is not, a few times. This is a lot. So that's why I say I feel like our shared history and the things from our past, if we just dig around and like acknowledge those emotions and those feelings, I think we don't necessarily have to attempt to put ourselves in the shoes of other people, right? We can just we can feel that. Like, I relived that fearful moment and I started crying, because then I'm thinking about all kinds of other people and children, domestic violence, people who are dealing with all these kinds of things that cause trauma. Now, my trauma was not the same as other people's trauma, but I never even thought I had any. And then as I start digging back, I'm like, yeah, I do. We've all been in a place that created this like indelible in us, but we pack it away.
So we've got a couple of questions in the chat. So the first question listed here says, how can we bring out the positivity around race in those environments where people cannot see it? How do we bridge the gap from conflict and discomfort to positivity?
Well, I think that's challenging, because if you have people, as we have seen from the Proud Boys and, some of these militia groups and some of these people who are so entrenched in their beliefs, we're not going to change that. I don't think we're going to change that narrative for them by approaching it with empathy and all of that. I think what we really need to do, or what would be more beneficial, is the rest of us, the people who have hearts, the people who have feelings, the people who want to activate and navigate and make truly lasting change in the world. Those are the people that we need, because as there become more of us, then they can't walk away. The conversations will get louder. We will be more able to ring that bell over the sound of whatever it is that they're doing or saying. So I don't know that I have people in my family, even still, who have, views that I do not agree with or align with. And it's just not necessarily something that you can talk about, because when people are deeply entrenched in their beliefs, they will not believe you. They will not open the door, not even a crack. So you're just talking to a closed door, and that's not going to get you anywhere. So I feel like it's more worth our efforts for conversations like this. People are on this call because this matters to them. This is important. They want to be part of a conversation around race, gender, equality, whatever, all the multiple topics that fall under this. And so for me, I think it's just more valuable. And it's not surround myself with yes people or people that agree with me exclusively, but it's how can we collectively empower ourselves and each other to just continue, because I kind of see we just need to push, like, eventually we're going to push you to a place where you can exist, right? It's going to be so we can create an environment that you no longer can be a part of. So you're either going to have to get on board or you're going to have to get out, like you'd like to tell everybody else. So, you know what? We just have to stay mobilized. The people who believe, the people who are open, the people who, you know, want to see truly lasting change. Because that's what I want to see. I don't waste my time on people that I can't talk to. I invest my time and energy in the people who want to do the work no matter where we are. We meet each other where we are, and we just, you know, sling on our backpack and get our water and just keep going forward.
Yeah, that has been a struggle for me too. And I've talked about that on previous discussions we've had here, because it can be an internal struggle when you know that's the wrong thing being done and you don't agree with those beliefs. And recently I got into it with a friend, and I'm like, how dare you jump in my inbox and try to educate me, the woman, the person of color, and shoot me some materials to say this is what I need to learn. But okay, so I just politely walked out of that. I'm not wasting my time on that.
Right.
But
exactly.
So within that, I think Nikolai's question is a good one too, a nice segue. So he asks, how do we find these commonalities or points of connection while honoring our different lived experience, or don't take away from our differences? That's a powerful question.
That's a powerful question. So say it again. Oh, actually, let me read it. Let me go in the chat and see it, because I want to make sure that I answer it. Commonalities.
So while you're reading that, Jennifer, if I can share a story as well. So I had a woman reach out to me who was struggling with a family member over politics.
Mm-hmm.
And the same, she comes from a place of, let me educate, let's have the conversation. And she said, it just spiraled and spiraled and spiraled, and there was no control, and I couldn't. I was so angry, and she called me and she was so upset. And exactly like you said, we can't waste energy on people who are not ready or willing to hear about differences or even the commonalities, right? Because if you were to go to someone and say, white experience, black experience, it's similar, here are our commonalities.
Here. Like if I called up my uncle, who is an avid, unfortunately, you know, not aligned with me, you know, and I started and said, well, don't you remember that mama, you know, your own mother grew up with 10 siblings and in a house that they had to put newspaper in the holes. You know, there was no electricity, there's no bathroom, there's all these things, you know, and that's the way that other people have lived and currently might live. Like that could be someone's situation. And it's not necessarily, you know, connected to race. I mean, I don't want to imply that, you know, all black people are just poor, because that's not true. You know, that's not true at all. But in my lived experience, I had a lot of interactions with black African-American people who were in the same boat as me, right? Financially or wealth-wise, those kinds of things at school, etc. So if I called him up and tried to have that conversation with him, he would just dump a load of ridiculousness all over me that would make me mad. And then I would have to hang up on him. You know, I would have to say something ugly that starts with the F, and I would have to hang up on him. And that is still my family member, although I am willing to hang up on him. I have blocked so many people from Facebook, like it is just crazy, because I'm not doing it. It's, you know what? You want to be filled with hate. You want to be filled with misery. You go for it, because that is not where I am. That is not where I want to live. That is not the kind of people that I want in my world. And so everything is not joy and sunshine all day long, but I'm with you. We can't change their minds. We can't, there's no place.
And that's the thing. I think we need to empower ourselves to say, it's okay to walk away. It's okay, right? Because we are so passionate about change and about education that we have to give ourselves permission to recognize the energy is being expended on someone who's not willing to listen. So let me move on and find someone who is willing to have the conversation. And I didn't mean to interrupt, but go ahead and read Nikolai.
Yeah, I want to get to Nikolai's question. And I think
we're
all in different places too, right? Like people are on different places. Like this is a journey. It is a journey to change. And change is hard, and change is painful, and change is uncomfortable. and it, triggers us in certain ways. But, again, that's where the F word can pop in and just say, no, we're not going to do that. I mean, yes, it's going to be hard, but screw it, because it's worth it, right? It's going to be hard, but it's going to be worth it at the end. Anything worth doing? But particular last question. So how do we find commonalities or points of connection while honoring our different lived experiences, or don't take away from differences? I am an avid reader. Like, I read all the time. Now, sometimes, and I balance between nonfiction and fiction. But one thing I think is important, and I think has also helped me, is that I read fiction from a variety of authors who have a variety of experiences, and I've kind of been on a tear lately, just reading all these different books. Well, because, the real world is kind of like hard right now. So I'm reading fictional stories, but that's where the emotions are, right? That's where those connections can be made, because they're human stories. I read a story about these three sisters. Their mother passed away, and she wanted them to go on this pilgrimage to India, and they were just like, oh, go. They were not happy, but, you tell the story. I have a sister, right? There was those sister relationships. They're the same, y'all. I mean, if you have a sibling, that sibling relationship, yes, it has different nuances because of your, whatever, wherever you're connected to the world. But those girls were arguing, they were fighting, they were manipulating each other. They, the oldest one was like corralling everyone. Like, that's the way it goes. So I think those are commonalities, and looking for those shared experiences. And I think it takes awareness. Like, you have to become aware of your own shared experiences. And I think it takes having conversations with people, not necessarily that have to be hard, but, tell me about how you grew up. Like, tell me about great things from your childhood, or tell me about, things that you're proud. Those kinds of questions, I'm not only a Scorpio, I'm also an introvert. So if we're going to have a chat, like, let's be meaningful. And I don't want to talk about the weather. I want to know who you are. I want to know how we got here. I want to know how we got in front of each other. Like, tell me things about you that I wouldn't know. These are kinds of questions. And I think that helps us find those connections, is conversation, right? And it doesn't always have to be about hard things. It can just be about the shared humanity that we have, right? The shared, like I said, sibling relationships. That's not new to anybody. Conflict with your parents, not new, right? They had all this guilt around their mom dying because, like, that's not new. It's just not new. And it's a place to make those connections, because we have these human experiences. They're just wrapped in different packages, right? That make that experience either more difficult, more or less, or, whatever it is. So
I was thinking about what you were just talking about with your uncle, and we all have those people in our lives who are adamantly perhaps not aligned with what we think about. And the temptation is certainly, because goodness knows we all have at least one of them, that you get so angry about it, you just want to shut that door completely. But I think what you're just talking about is the way around that. It's not so much don't talk about it, it's figuring out most of that anger and pig-headedness, if we can call it that, stems from some sort of fear of something, right? It stems from some experience of something. Right. Hatred stems from fear. There's no kid out there that has started with hate. It stems from something. And right. Trying to dig into those people that you have that really antagonistic, because they are on one side of the fence and you are on the other side, figuring out what is the conversation you can have that has nothing to do with it, to figure out where are they coming from, and is there something you can talk about? Because my brother's having this problem. His biological dad is on the complete opposite side of the fence, and he has just reconnected with him, and he's sad because his dad's sick, and he wants to he wants to not lose the time they have together now that they've suddenly gotten back in touch. And he's like, I can't talk to him. He's so pro, we all know who it is. And my brother's not. And he's like, I have nothing to talk about. And I said, you can't find some other conversation to have with him about something, anything? Ask him about his childhood. Ask him about, his fears. He's sick. Ask him about that. It doesn't have to be about this topic that we all are so upset about. Find the commonality and dig away at the, well, if you're afraid you're sick, oh gosh, I'm afraid you're sick too. And what are we going to do, about healthcare in the future? What if it goes this way and we don't have healthcare, or if it doesn't go? It doesn't have to be the head on.
Right.
I think you're an idiot because I can't understand how anyone believes anything that comes out of that person's mouth. It just has to be this tiny little piece of, just tell me about your childhood. Tell me about what you're afraid of.
And I don't disagree with you.
It's hard.
I can only speak to the people that are currently in my life that are in that area. And I think at a certain point, I get to choose how much toxicity is going to be allowed in my arena. And I have an aunt that is no longer allowed in my arena because you can't have a conversation with her. It always turns back to something else. So this is just a little example. Several weeks ago, I posted something about, I think when Kamala Harris accepted her nomination at the DNC. And she mentioned about her mother, how proud her mother would be, but her mother has passed away. My mother has been dead for 6 years. So my connection was, here is this woman receiving the greatest honor of her life to this point. And man, she misses her mother and wishes her mother was here to see her. That was my connection. I mean, I love her anyway, but like that hit me because I feel like, I'm doing things, I'm living my life in a way that feels authentic and true. And I wish my mother was here to see that because she would be so freaking proud. My mother was my first feminist. So she would just be thrilled at the work that I'm doing and the way that I live my life on my terms, and it would make her so proud. Of course, my aunt had to chime in. That woman is nothing like your mother. Your mother, and I was like, oh, stop. Don't, because this is not about Kamala Harris. It's about me. It's about me saying, I wish my mother was here. And you just totally hijacked my post about my mother, who would also be blocking you because she would be worse than me. And so stop it. Stop trying to act like my mother was somebody that she wasn't. So at some point, I just have to be like, I can't. Plus, I had to block her because she kept sending me all these articles and all this ridiculousness and emails and everything. And I'm just like, you have to stop. And I would say, please don't send this to me. Oh God, then I'd get 15 more. And
she just hasn't talked loud enough at you. That's what it is.
And I'm like, and my father does still talk to her because it's my mom's sister. And of course, he's known her since they were all 15 years old. Now they're in their 70s. And he's like, your aunt's crazy. I said, I know, that's why I blocked her. But you can't, I think sometimes you can just have a more generic, less confrontational conversation. But at least for the people that I know, you can't have it. They don't want you to have just a general conversation. They want to shove it in your face. It's almost like they're trying to make you angry. They're trying to poke you. They're trying to get you to respond. And I'm just not doing that. I have no energy for that. Now, I think in the case you're describing, I think it is worthwhile. This is a person you may not have for much longer. So find a commonality. And I don't disagree with finding commonality. I'm huge about that. But I mean, I have commonality with this woman and she still won't see it. My grandparents are happy with her.
It's funny because we all do have those people, and it really is a huge challenge, and I've stepped away from people that I'm like, nope, toxicity, and you have to honor yourself first. But it is that double-edged sword, right? It's that compassion versus protection versus what did people do when they couldn't block people? Oh my God, and they were forced to spend time with. How did we do this? How did I laugh about this whole cancel culture thing now, which you know, okay, whatever. But there's a tiny bit of truth, and that's the thing. There's a tiny bit of truth in everything of everybody's viewpoint, tiny. But it is. What did you do when you couldn't just walk away? Now it's a little easier because we're all locked down. So, you know, you don't want to see somebody. You have 100% excuse. I'm sorry, I cannot come to Thanksgiving this year. I just can't possibly risk all of you getting sick. Thank the Lord, I don't have to go. But you know what I'm saying, right? What's going to happen next year at Thanksgiving when we no longer have that excuse, hopefully, God willing.
Well, fortunately for me, I live 1,000 miles away from anybody who's going to come here for Thanksgiving, and they don't. So I can keep that boundary in lock. But you're absolutely right, and I think it's really unfortunate that, like, it's super unfortunate that we are now in such a polarized place because, you know, previously I was raised a Democrat. My mother was like yellow dog Democrat. You just vote Democrat down the line. You don't even have to do your research. It's a Democrat day. Well, that's kind of how she raised us. I do my research. Like, I'm not quite like, let me just go there, but I do, you know. So she's always been in like disagreement with her sister, right? There's always been a political division. And there's some also family drama that I won't go into, but, you know, all the stuff that people have experienced. I mean, basically, I'm not going to go into it. Anyway, she won't be watching this, but anyhow. But anyway, there was always a disagreement, but you could agree to disagree. I cannot agree to disagree with your racist mess. I can't just disagree with it. I refuse to tolerate it, right? It's just not going to happen. I don't have to agree to disagree because you're a misogynist. Like, there's just some things I think, you know, you tolerate tomatoes on your pizza if you don't like them, but that's not what you do with people. And so I just feel like I get to choose. And, you know, I have mixed feelings about cancel culture and stuff like that, because on the one hand, we do have freedom of speech. People do get to say what they want to say. There are consequences, though. And so if I don't want to hear what you have to say, or I don't want to shop at your store because I don't like the way you treat people, I do get to make that choice, right? I don't think it makes me a snowflake. I think it makes me a person who's using her brain and her pocketbook to be the nasty woman that she, you know, intends to be. So I do.
Can you tell us more about this? Tell us more.
Okay, well, you know, the whole nasty woman concept, it says, 1, a strong, informed woman who terrifies weak, ignorant males. And the second definition is a woman who does her part to save her country in 2020.
Nice.
Rescue.
I love it.
Rescue. But anyway, so yeah, I mean, I think it's a fine line. And I'm in several groups, which has been interesting. There's a couple groups on Facebook I'm in. One is former Trump supporters. I don't know if anybody has seen David Weissman. I follow him on Twitter, and he's created a group. And he's a former supporter, like avid supporter, who is now, you know, stepped away from the dark side, you know, and is now part of the resistance and the Rebel Alliance. And he's been very interesting, and being in that group is interesting because you have a combination of people who were never supporting this kind of, you know, rhetoric, and then other people who did and now don't. And so I think, and that's why I think there is hope, y'all. There is hope, there is hope, there is hope. The people who want to stay fixed in this mindset and stay in this power structure, we have opportunity. Right? We're raising children who don't feel this way. We are raising children who are used to being around everybody, anybody, don't care. It's irrelevant. It's about the person, right? It's the heart, the soul of the person. Like, they don't care. This stuff is completely, like, it's not that they don't see it or they don't notice it. It's just not a determining factor around whether or not they want to engage with you or be friends with you or hang out with you or whatever, right? It's like, oh yeah, okay. And then you just keep on going. Like, it's a nothing burger. And so, so I think there's a lot of hope. I feel that way anyway. I mean, I feel that there's hope, that conversations like these, bringing people together who have the same, you know, we're not all going to be on the same page, but we have the same goal. We have the same place we want to get to. I think you know how the Republican Party and the Democratic Party used to be like, we have the same end goal in mind. We just have different plans around getting there, right? They're just different paths, but it's to the same place. Yeah, we're not there anymore. It's so distinctly different in ways that are, I don't know, it's just so distinctly different now, right? It's not that anymore. And I think that's why we used to could have conversations. We used to could have a more civil discourse, because it wasn't that we were debating whether or not maintaining racism was a deal, like that's something we should do, right? And all these conspiracy theories and all these, militias and people walking around with these huge guns. Like, really? This is America, people. And I realize we have a whole lot of problems. We got tons of skeletons in our closet that are thankfully falling right on out onto the floor, and we can go bury them and be done with it. But we're not perfect. But isn't it we want to, in order to form a more perfect union, we just always trying to be better? Where has that gone? Right? Why have we lost this communal sense of we're trying to be better?
Yeah.
Well, we don't like it, but
I was just going to ask that, because I just, at 44 years old, I turned 44 this year. I don't ever remember being this divided, feeling this anxious, completely, like people just are so on one end or the other. Like, what happened to the middle, and what happened to that commonality, and how, well, again, we know some of how, but how did we get this far apart?
right.
And how are people going to see commonality when it's that much of a difference for some people? But it's back to just not giving that time and space to those individuals.
And not believing that everybody believes that. I think that is the one thing I would say is those people have always been there. I don't think there's any more or less than there used to be. There's probably more quote unquote power because there's a herd now that they can see and they can go and join. But I don't think there's any more of them. And I think there's far more people that don't believe that bull crap.
Me too.
That are quieter, more respectful. It's just not their mannerisms to go out and be super, hey, I'm proud of being racist kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I also don't want us to, I think there is a problem. I think there is a systemic problem. Please do not misunderstand me. But I also think there's so many more people that want to fix it than believe in it. We just have to give people a way to be heard, as much as that smaller way minority that want to keep this unequal power struggle in place. We just have to figure out how to give voice and activity to the far larger group of people that want to make it better. I do think they're out there. I think that's the one thing we've seen this year is there are, and I remember right after Trump got elected in the Million Women March, there are people that want to make a change and have made changes. Let's not forget that.
No, we have made changes.
4 years, the difference in Congress in just 4 years. So people are there. Let's be positive about we can make change because, and if you think about, it's so sweet. You're 40, and I remember 40. I do. I remember it well, and it was wonderful.
Yeah, I'm past that too.
But again, like think about the 60s and the 70s. Maybe not the 80s, because God knows what we were doing, Suman, in the 80s. And I'm sorry, we were clearly just asleep in the 80s, and that's our bad.
I don't know if we were asleep as much as we were just on drugs.
That's our bad. But we have made progress, and I don't want people to forget that progress is being made. It is slow, and it is painful, and it is not at all where we want it to be, and I don't want to in any way pretend that it is. But let's not get discouraged, because I have been amazed the changes that have happened, and for better and worse. But
I agree.
We're not laying down. People are not going back to being quiet.
No, I have a 22-year-old son who was telling me about the other day, called me out and said, "Mom, that's just passive activism. That's not helpful." And I was like, "What?" He's like, "It's passive activism. You gotta do something." And I was like, "I'm trying." But it was so cool to have this conversation with my 22-year-old son, who half the time seems like he's not paying attention to anything but sports scores. And so, but he was an informed voter. He came home Wednesday. We voted as a family. one of our local school board candidates was a former, or the teacher at his school when he was there, and he was like, what? I can vote for her? Oh my gosh, this is, he was so jazzed, like, oh, this is someone that I know, I trust. I mean, this is great. So, you know, he's becoming part of the democratic process as well. And I think that's what gives me hope, is us here having this conversation, being able to have these conversations with more people. You know, people are, I mean, I kind of get tired of the waking up, because like, how in the hell have you been asleep all this time? Like, you know, I was telling someone the other day, I'm like, y'all do realize Black Lives Matter has been around for like 7 years. This did not just start with George Floyd. This has been around, y'all. You weren't paying attention. Maybe this is what really got you. And I am so sorry for the loss of him and his family and everything they're dealing with. And then, but we take that and we move forward and we say, we're not going to do this anymore, right? We're going to figure this out. We can figure this out. And I think that's why I get frustrated sometimes, because we're America. We have done great things. We have done terrible things, but we've also done great things. And if we all come together and focus on how we can make America the country that we have loved, right? Because, you know, now I'm kind of embarrassed. I don't really like want to shout it from the rooftops, but you know, we can get back to that place. We can make the changes. We can be the change. Anyway.
No, I am so glad you said, so that's the point that I just put it in the chat, but that's the point that I was trying to make. Like, it feels like sometimes we're over here and we're over here and it's super divided. I do not want to neglect, we need that hope. We need to be inspired. But I gotta say that I have to bring us back to something that, like, some people, I am one of those people. I am tired. I cry. I am just, I have to say, this is my lived experience. I've never felt like this in my 44 years. And right. I don't want that to be detracted from either. I'm not trying to imply that you were, but that is a full picture. And we want to have hope. We want to be inspired. Yes, those people have always been out there. They probably always will, because we're not going to change their minds. But I don't think we do ourselves any favors either this has been part of the problem, right? And how we got to the systemic place if we turn a blind eye, like nothing's going on. That can be an issue. That's
true. I like Elizabeth's comment. That's true. I agree with you. I absolutely agree with you, Elizabeth. It's 400 years old. But you know, I totally agree with you. Completely. So I do not discount that at all. But yes, progress has been very slow, and it's been intentionally slowed. I read this book many months ago called White Rage, and it's like a historical account from the Civil War on, about every time the Black community was making progress, some, you know, white people had to like do something that prevented it. It just like over and over and over again. So, you know, if you don't even, if you can't even get your head around, you know, white privilege or whatever that's going to mean to you, like, read that book, because that will show you factually every law that was put in place to put people back, everything that was done by majority or probably 100% white dudes, you know, running the country. It's only been in the very recent past that women have been included in this decision making on any level. The less, even, you know, more recent past that we have Black and African American representation. Like, our government does not reflect our demographics in this country at all. Like, it is not at all. Yep. And that's been on purpose. And so as the people of this country, I feel like we got to get louder. We got to get more demanding, and we have to really be willing to hold these people accountable, because no, I can't change a law, but I can raise some hell, and I can be in your face, and I can be in your face with a whole bunch of other people. And at some point you have to listen to us. And I think we're in a good place, because guess what? Some of you people are not going to be there come January. So guess what? The people spoke, and we're going to make changes.
And you're right. I was going to say the same thing, Jennifer, is the fact that the way the politics is right now, it is creating a space for certain voices to be louder than they should and have been in the past. And I don't know if it's because one side has sort of sat back and gotten comfy and said, well, we had a Black president and things have been really good. And, you know, maybe a little bit of complacency kicking in there.
I agree with that.
Right. And then you get someone in here who over fear is like, okay, well, look at these. Now we had a Black president. All right, people, that group of people have been very quiet. Let's raise that hell again. Because like you said, as people of color are making progress, as women are making progress, certain groups wake up and squash it down or try to squash it down.
Right.
And we have to amplify our voices even louder now because they have found their voice. They now have a leader who is giving them the stage for that voice. Right. And so we have to become even louder than the voices that are happening right now.
And that's why I say that and that's yet another reason why I'm not wasting my time on people who don't want to participate in change, right? We're going to invest energy into the people who want to do the work, into the people who want to take the action, and the people who, you know, want to make this country what it can be for all of the people that live in it. Like, there is so much opportunity to be like this amazing. I think it might have been, I can't remember, maybe it was last night, and when I just happened to flip over to the Joe Biden town hall, and he was saying, we used to be respected. We used to be like the shining light of democracy in the world, and we are not. We are not. And I don't think, you know, if you go back in the past, like, we weren't always democratic, right? I mean, the whole Constitution was founded on, you know, white dudes count and nobody else does. And you know, when we're making progress, and it's slow because the people in power don't want to give it up. I mean, you know, we have these conversations. It's almost like, well, duh, who does want to give up their power? We have to give them reasons. We have to provide value. We have to, you know, there's so many people out there who are just not going to do the right thing. Just does not occur to them. and so you're right. We got to be loud. We've got to find our power in those common places where we can love each other and lift each other up and be like, we are in this together. We are arm in arm in this fight for not our way of life, because I'm not thrilled with our way of life. So not for that, not the past, for the future. The future is bright. The future can be bright, but it's going to take everybody who's yeah, I like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we're demanding it. And I think there's more people now who are ready to demand it and ready to do hard work around getting what we want. And so I feel hopeful, but I also know that, you know, you take 2 steps forward, you take 10 back, 2 back, and we're going to get there.
It's hard work. I just want to, this Nikolai he's just one of my favorite people. But I want to make sure that for people who are watching it on the replay, that they can feel this power. It says, power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did, and it never will. And it's a Frederick Douglass quote. So that, just got feels.
Exactly. And that's why we got to get this blue tsunami out there, because then power will know that we ain't jacking around. We're done with you people in power. We're done. We're done with your poor stewardship of your power. Because that's what it really is. You have the ability to do things that would benefit everyone, and yet you choose only to benefit certain people. And that's not how that rolls. That's not how that works. I mean, it's worked for you so far, but we're stopping that. It's got to be done. I love the quote. Thank you, Nikolai.
I think, you know, unless anyone else has any other questions, I think you wrapped us up between that quote that Nikolai put in there and what you shared. I think that's a perfect segue to just, you know, one, thank you so much for being here, and everyone who's on this journey. It melts my heart every week. I know I can speak for Suman on this too, that we have this community who shows up every single week. Same faces, new faces. We love welcoming new faces too. And we continue to spread the word. And that's how you spread love and joy, and how we're going to make that change. This is hard. I said, like, I have cried. I have multiple times, and I feel defeated. But it's this community is so important that we continue to move forward, like you said, Janifer. And so I just appreciate you all taking this hour to be here with us. We will be reposting the replay that will be there. I'm really excited that we have all our videos on one channel now. They were on a couple, so now you get to go to one spot, and they will all be there for you. For those of you who need to watch the replay, just a reminder that we do Fridays. The last Friday of every month is unrecorded, so you can come and join just like we are today, but we won't hit that record button, but still welcome you to come share your thoughts, your questions. Suman, I feel like I missed maybe one piece, but anything else you want to share as we wrap up?
Nope, you did a great job. The only thing I'll ask is if anyone wants to stay afterwards and we stop recording, you're more than welcome to stay and have another 5 or 10 minute conversation that's unrecorded if Janifer is available to stay.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
I knew there was something. Thank you, everyone. I hope you have a great Friday and weekend. And, again, we appreciate you all so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Take care.